Hello, it's Thursday, April 2nd, and welcome to Minutes That Matter. Let me invite you to open up your Bible with me today to Luke chapter 18. And as you're turning there, let me point back to our previous two episodes. If you've been with us, you know that we're going through a brand new series entitled On the Road to Jericho. And we've been looking at Christ's journey from the north end of Israel down to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover and to go to his crucifixion. And as he's going, we see him interacting with individuals along the way that bring us some very important lessons for our own life. Well, in the last two episodes, we saw him interacting with his disciples, the apostles, as they were working through wrong expectations. In the first episode we looked at, they were working through wrong expectations of Christ and who he is and what he should be doing. And we learned that even though he was explaining to them that he was going to have to die and suffer and for the sins of the world, that they still just weren't getting it because it didn't align with what their expectations were for Jesus. And then in the next narrative, we see that they had wrong expectations for self. They saw themselves in places of prominence and authority as Christ came into his new kingdom, and they wanted those positions. But now, the narrative switches from the attention surrounding the disciples to Christ's interaction with individuals along the way. And so if you're there, follow along as I begin reading in verse 35. It says, "As he drew near to Jericho, a blind man was sitting by the roadside begging. And hearing a crowd going by, he inquired what this meant. They told him, 'Jesus of Nazareth is passing by.' And he cried out, 'Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me.' And those who were in front rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he cried out all the more, 'Son of David, have mercy on me.' And Jesus stopped and commanded him to be brought to him. And when he came near, he asked him, 'What do you want me to do for you?' As if Jesus didn't know, right? He said, 'Lord, let me recover my sight.' And Jesus said to him, 'Recover your sight. Your faith has made you well.' And immediately he recovered his sight and followed him, glorifying God. And all the people, when they saw it, gave praise to God." Now, let me just point to a couple of details really quick from parallel passages. Some say that he was coming out of Jericho, and what he was doing was coming out of the ruins of old Jericho into the new Jericho. We also see from other parallel passages that there's more than just one beggar, there's two. And this beggar, the one that seems to get the prominence in the narratives, his name was Bartimaeus. And so maybe he's the stronger personality, maybe he's the one that was just doing the talking for the two of them. But there were two blind beggars. We also need to understand that this was not unusual for Jericho to have individuals such as this in their city. Matter of fact, Jericho probably had a higher number of individuals who were blind in their city than others, because Jericho in the day was known for a specific balm, a salve that was supposed to heal people from their blindness. And in other words, it was kind of their essential oil of the day. And so these two men would have been sitting there by the roadside begging for alms, but they also would have been doing it because, remember, there are a number of people that are on this major highway, this major thoroughfare from the north end of the country into Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover. So what better time for them to, and what better place for them to be in order to beg for alms, to beg for money to support themselves, because being blind, they had no way to support themselves. And so as people are journeying through and on this highway into Jericho, there's something different about this crowd that is passing in front of them. They just hear something that makes them note that this group of people is different from others. And so they ask a passerby, "Who is this? What's going on?" There seems to be a large crowd following somebody. And they say, "It's Jesus of Nazareth." Well, that is all that Bartimaeus and his partner needed to hear. Jesus had a reputation. They knew who Jesus was, they knew what he could do, and they knew what he could potentially do for them. And so immediately they cry out, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on us." Now, what's astounding to me is the reaction of the crowd towards these men. They too knew what Jesus could do for these men. And so it amazes me that the crowd didn't stop Jesus and try to bring Jesus to them, or that They didn't grab these two men and bring them to Jesus. That would have been probably the normal reaction of most of us. And yet they turned to them and rebuked them and said, "Shut up, be quiet, keep your voice down," which made these men cry out even more. They knew in their own hearts and minds that this was their one and only chance to truly be healed from their blindness. And so they cried in an even louder voice, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on us." And Christ stops and he says, "Bring those men to me." Now, in another narrative, we see that Bartimaeus leaves his cloak where it's at, something that would have been valuable to him because he wouldn't have had many possessions, and goes to Jesus, which in my heart and mind makes me kind of wonder if he didn't know that Jesus could and would heal him. And so he would be able to return and go back and get his cloak later. I don't know, that's just speculation, but I just can't help but think of that little detail. And so then when Bartimaeus and his partner are brought to him, Jesus asks them, "What can I do for you?" And they ask for the obvious: "Heal me, restore my sight," which helps us understand that Bartimaeus and potentially his partner were not blind from birth, but rather were blind at some other point in time in their life, which would have accentuated the loss that they had felt, because having once seen this wonderful, beautiful world, now all they experienced and knew was darkness. And kind of a picture of mankind, isn't it? But here's the lesson I want us to focus on. And it's this: not that Jesus healed them. And it wasn't necessarily also that Bartimaeus' faith healed him, because there were many people that Jesus healed who had no external faith whatsoever. I believe he was referring to the salvational faith of Bartimaeus and his partner towards him, because we see him then responding in worship of God, not just in recognition and praise for what he did for him and gave him something. Rather, I want us to look at Jesus's response in light of what was going on in his life. Christ was on a timetable. He was going to be fulfilling prophecy that came hundreds, thousands of years before, to the very day and time in which they were predicted. Also, on his mind was, in a very real way, the agony that waited in front of him. He had already told the disciples, not only on the road to Jericho and up to Jerusalem, but even in previous journeys, of what was waiting for him in Jerusalem. And so that agony had to preoccupy his mind and his heart. And so in spite of all of these things, we see that Jesus was never too preoccupied to show compassion. He was never in too much of a hurry to provide healing. And he was never in too much agony in his own heart and mind to address the agony of others. Friends, here's where I want this to intersect with our lives today. In the midst of all of this COVID-19 chaos, we can become incredibly focused on what's missing in our own life, and our own needs, and our own agony, and our own hurt, and our own agenda, and our own timetable, to miss the opportunities that God is giving us to show compassion towards others. And so as we approach this day, and as we approach the days ahead, until we are free of all of this and we're back with one another once again, but even after that, I want us to be looking for the opportunities that God is giving us in our life, in the midst of all of our hurriedness, in the midst of all of our calendars and our schedules and our timing, in the midst of our own agony and our own hurts, to take the opportunity to address other people's needs, other people's hurts, other people's agonies, and to provide the compassion that Jesus showed these men. Again, I want to thank you for joining us today here on Minutes That Matter. If you've not yet done so, hit the thumbs up button. If this has been an encouragement to you, share it on your social media pages. And if you have not yet done so, hit the subscribe button and the little bell button so that you might be notified when we put out a new video. And then if you are visiting this Minutes That Matter for the very first time and would like to know more about our spiritual family, click on the Show More button below the video description, and it will take you to our church's website where you can get to know us better. Again, thank you for being with us today on Minutes That Matter.